in radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
And we are back on the Financial Survival Network. I'm Kerry Lutz, and we've got our old friend back, Jerry Robinson. You know him well, economist, best-selling author of that great book, Bankruptcy of Our Nation, Your Financial Survival Guide, and anything dealing with financial survival, well, you know you're going to find it on the Financial Survival Network. Jerry, welcome back.
Hey, it's great to be here. Thanks, Kerry.
It looks like Russia has declared war on the U.S. dollar, and the U.S. has declared war on the Ukraine, and therefore war on Russia, right?
Yeah, it's kind of how it's turning out to look. Russia, we put out a piece this week earlier on how Russia, in essence, has really been testing the waters on the PetroDollar system. In the fact that Gazprom, which is their largest state-run gas monopoly, has been testing the waters with Asian buyers to see if they would be willing to pay in other types of currencies. Mainly the euro is what they've been using to settle the contracts, and they're getting very positive feedback. So Asian buyers are willing to do this now. Of course, as as people who watch the economy and the global economy in particular, and the dollar, I mean, this is a very major story because, again, this whole idea that suddenly the dollar collapses overnight, you and I wake up and it's completely worthless. I mean, that makes for a good movie or maybe makes for a good book, but that's not really in reality how it works. It starts like this. It's little pieces of the puzzle beginning to break down. And so we have Gazprom and Russia working together with Asian energy buyers to move away from the dollar for their oil purchases and gas purchases. And so what this means is that they're going to have to bear a lot of transaction costs. There's a lot of risk involved in this, but they're going to try. And once you set the tone, once you create that path, so to speak, then it allows others to follow in their footsteps. And so right now, everybody takes dollars for oil, and that creates this tremendous artificial demand for dollars. And because you have an artificial demand for dollars, you get an artificial supply of dollars. And when you have an artificial supply of dollars, then you have artificially high prices. And so what we're really saying here, if you really just boil it all down, is that this whole thing in Russia, could portend very bad things for the U.S. dollar. And because of that, we could see eventually this breakdown of this petrodollar system we've been talking about for a long time, and finally see other countries begin to move to other currencies, maybe even a basket of currencies. So this is really bad news for the U.S. I think people who have a lot of money in the markets or they own gold or silver, these are the kind of stories that you want to pay real close attention to because they will directly impact you eventually.
Well, I will postulate what's going to happen next as a direct result of this, Jerry, because you heard from Draghi that the ECB is now ready to do QE. They're going to print up 1.4 trillion, I don't know if it was euros or dollars, and that's a direct response to the strength of the euro because the euro, if you look at the chart, it's been getting stronger against the dollar because they haven't been printing that many euros. And effectively, they're going to bring down the value of the euro because they specifically don't want to become the reserve currency, the euro. Okay, it's all part of the currency wars thing. And you're going to see if what Russia's next reaction to that's going to be. But I do agree with you 100% that the petrodollar's days are numbered, whether this is going to lead to a war or not. I don't think there's going to be an orderly transition here. I think that Putin is really is letting the genie out of the bottle here. I think it's going to lead to chaos and worldwide collapse here. And I don't think the Chinese are really in a hurry to do this. I think they have a timetable that probably they wanted to do this over the next 5 years or so, not over an 18-month horizon, which Putin is kind of forcing the issue. So this is going to be bad for everybody. But, Putin does, what he thinks is in Russia's best interest. And we're going to see bad stuff happening if this thing really persists. And if they get into a pissing match with Putin, the world is going to become an interesting place real fast,
Yeah, Crimea sits in a really strategic area, of course, the area in Ukraine that Russia wanted. There was a story put out by Bloomberg just a couple of days ago, Kerry, and it said that, in essence, China was now moving into Crimea because it had interests there that it wanted. So in many ways, Crimea may look like a gift from Russia to China, because Russia and China, we hear about them all the time, about how they're going to collude and how they're going to do all these things. Well, I mean, Russia is really a disarticulated country anyway. And you have the cities themselves are so spread out. I mean, it's like if you look at Russia on a map, you see Moscow here where L.A. is on the U.S., and then, another city where New York is, and it's blizzard weather in between both of these two cities. So, so the infrastructure there is not very good. And the far eastern side of Russia and the extreme western part of China where they meet, there's been a lot of concern about that there. There's a lot of mistrust and suspicions, mutual suspicions between the two countries. And so they have a lot of bridges to cross as well. They're not just, best buddies by any means. But it is interesting that China now is making a move in Crimea at Russia's behest. It may be, if you kind of draw the lines, connect the dots, that Russia took Crimea for the Chinese in exchange for something that the Chinese are going to do for Russia. We don't know everything that's going on behind closed doors. But again, when you follow the money, you quickly discover that what's being said in the news media is usually not what's actually, transpiring behind closed doors.
Yeah, well, in the future, China is looking to colonize Siberia, all right? And because, look, vast swaths of China are getting contaminated. I mean, this is the reality of the situation, and they need places to go where there's resources and there's water. And that is Siberia. And this is why, effectively, Putin's strategy is really short-sighted, and his long-term interests really rest with the West. But, sometimes people outsmart themselves, and they wind up doing things that aren't necessarily in their long-term interests. But we'll see if the grand KGB chess master winds up outsmarting himself in the long run. And, don't forget, we've got a couple of oceans that protect us in the final analysis. So it's all going to play out the way it's going to play out. And there's going to be a grand collapse. I mean, just look at Rickard's new book. I mean, I think Rickards really does have the inside track. We talked to him yesterday, and there's going to be chaos. And then, is the IMF going to step in and make everything right? Or are we going to have gold bills of, we're going to have gold bills of trade? That's what the thing is being bandied about. I personally don't believe, Jerry, that gold is going to be used for trade unless this system really breaks down beyond all recognition and there's no trust whatsoever where you're forced to trade with gold, because these politicians in any country don't want to give up their power. You know that, right?
Yeah, and that's why we've been somewhat against the whole concept of a global currency revaluation. There's been a lot of talk about how suddenly we're going to return to a gold standard or something of that nature. And that sounds great. That would be great. That would be great if politicians and monetary authorities would willingly place themselves underneath some sort of constraint like gold. Again, why would they do that? No idea. In fact, they wouldn't do it even before World War II. It took World War II to bring about Bretton Woods, and that was a real global currency revaluation. And so I think before we have a total worldwide change in the global currency regime, you're going to have a struggle. You're going to have a war, sadly. And I think that's what's going to happen, is that we're going to see a major struggle followed by that currency revaluation, a reset of some sort, a Bretton Woods Part 2, if you will. Something like that certainly could happen, but I think war has to happen first. None of these nations are going to lay down willingly and start allowing other nations to dictate their own monetary policy. Whereas we've seen that happen in Europe, and the Europeans are already up in arms about it. You mentioned Draghi earlier, and I'm in full agreement with you with the fact that we do expect to see massive amounts of monetary stimulus in Europe, which will be very bullish for the European markets. We're already positioning ourselves ahead of that in certain countries, mainly using ETFs on these countries. They have been outperforming so many other asset classes over the last several months. We've really been enjoying that rise in Europe, but we think it's going to continue to go higher, and this is because of the massive liquidity injections that they'll put into the market. And up until this point, Draghi has only threatened. He's just threatened to put money into the system. He really hasn't done much, as you even pointed out. So just his threat alone was enough to stave off a double-dip recession in France and a few other places. So what happens when they actually begin to put money into the system? Well, I think it's going to put salve on the wound. Remember, next month, there is a major election going on across Europe, Europe-wide. And you have the Eurosceptics, and then, of course, you have the Europhiles, the people who think Europe is great, best thing since sliced bread. And then you have the Eurosceptics, people like Nigel Farage and UKIP, and these guys who are saying, look.
And like you and me.
Yeah, it's a total disaster. It's a total disaster. You've got to end this. And
put it out of its misery, please. Once and for all, please do it. Right?
Well, I have a prediction on that in May, and I know predictions are silly. I mean, I'm not one really to make them very often, but I really don't think, as much as I like Nigel Farage, as much as I like what the Eurosceptics have to say,
the UKIP party.
Yeah, I don't think that they can win the overall hearts and minds of the people of Europe. I don't think that's going to happen. It's going to require a massive turnaround. They're already in it. And so therefore they're going to try to salvage it. It's the same reason why Republicans did not want Obamacare. They went in kicking and screaming because they knew once it went into law, they would never get rid of it. Just like Medicare, just like Social Security, Obamacare is not going anywhere. I mean, and you already see now Republicans trying to tweak it and edit it to their own tastes and preferences because they know it's here to stay. And I think it's the same way with Europe. Europe's here to stay. We hate it. We don't like it. It's a bad idea. But they're going to do everything they possibly can to maintain their control on power, and that's going to include pumping money into the system, and investors should be ready to take advantage of that.
You're totally right, and it's just like Texas hates being part of the United States, but they ain't going anywhere.
Right.
So we're going to talk about palladium, gold, and mining stocks up next on the Financial Survival Network.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
And we are back. FinancialSurvivalNetwork.com, and we're talking with Jerry Robinson of FTMDaily.com. So, Jerry, David Morgan always says the white metals lead the yellow, and palladium and platinum have been leading the current rally. For sure, for 6-8 months, gold was ahead of platinum. Gold was more expensive. Ounce of gold was more expensive than an ounce of platinum. which has only happened 6 times since World War II for very short periods of time. Now, ounce of platinum, as we speak on April 16th, 2014, ounce of platinum is 1,434, ounce of gold, 1,303. So that situation can't be allowed to stand for long. And palladium, is right back up to $800 or close to it after getting slammed yesterday, where it was $813 or $16, gets killed yesterday, along with platinum and gold, and it's back up right away. So that just shows it was a little technical slam down for whatever purpose. The things you got to remember about palladium and platinum is their physical markets. The futures markets do not wag the tail of that dog, because those markets, you have to have the physical supply, because the cars cannot run on paper palladium or paper platinum. They've got to run on the physical stuff, right? Because the smog is not going to get, the smog will not be abated by paper palladium. Just doesn't work that way.
Right. No matter what the stockbroker tries to tell you. Now, we do like to use ETFs for the mining stocks, as opposed to going straight into mining stocks themselves. And I think Rick Rule, who again is just a great resource investor, a great investment mind, and he's said it over and over again that these mining stocks are like lottery tickets, and I cannot agree more. I mean, they really are. But you look at the ETFs as a way to get exposure to many of them at one time. We do like that, and we are seeing the same thing with mining. Mining is nearing a buy signal. It's not quite there yet, but it's moving close.
So you like the GDJX and the...
We actually use GDX as probably our number one ETF. We use GDXJ also.
GDXJ, I meant, yeah.
Yeah, GDXJ is the junior miners. We prefer GDX overall because it has a bit more safety and it focuses on the bigger miners. But that's the one we're going to use. We've certainly seen gold mining, the overall index, the gold bugs index, really find support at about the 200 level. The same place that it was back in the 2008 crisis. So it really kind of bottomed out there, and it's beginning to bounce higher. Again, there's not a buy signal yet, but it's getting close. For all precious metals investors, with the exception of palladium right now, everything is just kind of moving into that perfect storm again. This is really good news for those who are holding precious metals long-term or those who are wanting to get exposure.
Hey, and you did an analysis of mining stocks, how they react in a market crash. Why don't you give us an idea of that?
Yeah, we got a question from one of our listeners, and they had asked, what happens? I mean, should I, if the market tanks and I'm buying mining stocks because I believe gold's going to go up, what happens to those mining stocks whenever the market crashes, say like in 2008 or something? And so we just went back and did a study on it. We put it on our website. It's free. But we showed that mining stocks actually diverged from the S&P 500 2 times during the last 15 years, and both times were negative divergences. But during the run-up to the overall crisis in 2008, we saw a much less steep decline in the overall gold mining and a much quicker rebound in gold mining than we actually saw in the S&P. So it wasn't really until gold started breaking down at about 2011, 2012 that these mining stocks began to also fall. And so their prices, in many ways, even though they are attached at the hip to the overall stock market, as you and I have talked about before, they tend to stumble at first whenever the market falls, and then the fundamentals kick in as gold and silver prices go higher, and they begin to detach themselves from the overall stock market and move higher. So for people with mining stocks, again, we've reached kind of a bottom. It's kind of carved out. It's beginning to make that fish hook. It's beginning to move higher. And we're looking forward to jumping into gold mining probably in the next 3 or 4 months.
Makes sense. And I know this wasn't on our agenda, but Bitcoin When we were in Vegas together, it was up there in I think around 700, maybe 800. Now it's down about 500. What's your feelings about Bitcoin, Jerry?
I own Bitcoin. I believe that it represents probably one of the most obvious desires for an alternative currency that we've seen in a long time. I mean, it's the creation of cryptocurrency in the face of out of control central bankers. It was designed, in fact, to confront the Fed. It was designed as a counter to the Fed in the fact that it was in limited supply and scarce. Again, I think I may sound like a broken record on this, but I am at both times. I am embracing Bitcoin, and I am also extremely skeptical of Bitcoin. I'm embracing Bitcoin because I realize that the technology that it represents is absolutely vital and necessary for us to go forward in the internet. It makes all the sense in the world when you fully comprehend what it really is. However, my skepticism is rooted in the fact that we don't know who did it. We don't know who created it. And so again, is it JP Morgan? Is it the Federal Reserve? Or, who made this? Because I tell you what, you talk about people always talk about confiscation. They're going to come and take my gold, or the Fed's going to come out and knock on my door with a gun and take my gold. No, they're just going to tell you to put money in Bitcoin. They're going to take it and they're going to say, oh, it's untraceable. We don't know who took it. So that's my only concern with the Bitcoin is that who's running it? And if people can steal from you and you don't know who it is, then that sounds like a great scam for the banksters. So I just don't know what to make of Bitcoin. But I do believe that everybody in the listening audience deserved or should owes it to themselves to go out and try to actually purchase $20 worth of Bitcoin. Just take $20 and just try to buy it. It'll probably take you about a week if you haven't done it before. It took me about a week to buy it when I bought it, a long time ago. And it's probably not any easier now than it was then. It's a laborious process. But I would encourage people to go out and actually do it. Understand what's happening. If you're an investor, if you call yourself an investor, you've got to understand what these cryptocurrencies mean. One other one that we've also invested in is Ripple. Ripple's the second largest by market cap, and it tends to yo-yo between a penny and 10 cents, kind of back and forth. You can catch it usually much cheaper, closer to a penny, if you get into you just kind of watch it. And Ripple overall is a very interesting cryptocurrency. It's very different from Bitcoin, but it's the same concept, just different applications. And so that might be something for your audience to look into as well.
Hey, and I agree with you on both counts. I'm wary of it, but I do see potential there. But like you said, it could all be some plot. And if JP Morgan or Goldman Sachs came out with this thing and said, hey, we got this cryptocurrency, you'll love it, everybody go invest in it, you'd say, New World Order, they're trying to take over, they're evil. But because some anonymous guy comes out with it and says this is the greatest thing since sliced bread, everybody embraces it and says it's cool. But who knows who came out with it, right?
Yeah,
it's disturbing.
And Kerry, that's a major question to ask before you start putting massive amounts of your wealth into Bitcoin. Again, I don't think anybody should shy away from buying one or two or, just having a little bit of exposure to it, because there are some predictions out there that one Bitcoin eventually will be worth seven figures. And people may say, well, that's ridiculous. But the truth of the matter is they are divisible. They're certainly scarce. They're certainly in limited supply. You can only have so many. And then they're also very divisible. So one Bitcoin could be broken up into, say, 1,000 pieces.
Satoshi or something.
Yeah, exactly.
A Satoshi, whatever the heck that is.
Yeah, so it's like a penny to $1, and so you can break them up. It's divisible. And so later on down the road, people may not be trading Bitcoins. They may be trading, just very small pieces of a Bitcoin. And if you own one, you may be sitting on a lot of money. So why not, take $300 or $400, $500, whatever it is now, and maybe consider, taking the dive and just holding on to it. Worst case scenario, you lose out, but my goodness, 10 years from now, it could be a very different scenario. We don't know. We have no clue what's going to happen.
Yeah, we don't know. And on that note, Jerry, just tell us your website, where we find you and read your work.
Yeah, we put out a daily briefing every single day. It's absolutely free at ftmdaily.com. That stands for followthemoneydaily.com. They can just type in Follow the Money to Google and they can find us. We do a free daily briefing by email. We also have a free podcast every single week, and we've been partnered with you for a long time, and we really appreciate coming on the program today. Thank you.
Hey, it's always great to have you, Jerry, and just go over to the show notes to this interview. Jerry's link is there. Just click it. You'll find it. Don't forget, subscribe to the newsletter. Jerry, thanks so much.
My pleasure. Thank you so much, Gary.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.